Hi, Rikki. Thank you for joining us today. For the purposes of our audience, I'm Chami. I'm with curretn and Save a Farm.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It truly is an honor. I know the work that you do. I think the work that you do is critical, and I'm really happy to be lending some perspective, from what we'll be talking about today.
I'm very comfortable here in Florida. Most of our audience watching this are probably going to be people that are in more comfortable spaces in the diaspora. What's it been like for you personally? And what do you feel like has been like in general for the people of Israel, for your clients, living with this for the last 5, 6 days?
It is difficult to describe what is going on here now. It is so different. We were woken up on, between Thursday night and Friday morning when this started. We were woken up with an alarm, a really sharp alarm, and understanding that something was going on with Iran. We've had two attacks from Iran before this. We saw absolute miraculous attacks, but we did understand that when it's attacked from Iran, it's different. It comes in as a barrage. It could be hundreds, but certainly, 100 ballistic missiles. I don't think people understand what that means. Entire streets from one hit, uh, buildings, many buildings away can have all of their windows blown out. This is serious. This is war. This is different. This was like everyone went running. Everyone was like, what is going on? And then waiting for an update. And then it took time to get an update. And then it was like, we're at war with Iran, which is like for decades, the thing,
This has been the threat, right?
this has been the threat. And it was like, wait, Israel initiated, what's going on? And we were just kind of, roaming around in our pajamas, wondering what was going on. And for those who had to leave their house, as I did, in our building, we don't have private mamads in the houses. We have a kind of community shelter downstairs in the basement.
Wow.
We're talking about floor -7. So it's like a hike to get down there in the middle
Oh
of the night.
gosh.
Yeah, and you're meeting neighbors and everyone's milling around and there's no reception, so you can't get updates. Like it's really, really, really intense. And this was how it started. It started getting differences in terms of the front command and what's to be expected and what we're allowed to do. The country shut down. There was a really reminiscent like Corona type of experience. The streets were absolutely silent. We were told not to get too far from a shelter. Stores were closed. Like it was just everything went so different overnight, and there was a very distinct feeling immediately in the
To
air
the
that,
point you said a minute ago, you said like, it felt almost like Corona, like streets are quiet, general businesses and stuff shut down, but essential workers have to still go, right? So doctors, soldiers, obviously. And I don't know if you know this, but in Israel, farmers are essential workers. They have to still be working on their fields, which is something that I think a lot of people in America would not realize. Um,
right.
and that's partially because America's structures are differently than Israel. Israel is built on agriculture. It's kind of the way our whole economy runs there is through the farms. And a big piece of it is also that our farmers are largely on our borders. And it's really, really scary to imagine what would happen if all the farmers sort of say, okay, I'm going to go inland. That kind of puts us in a very, very vulnerable position to our enemies, which is really scary. And today, I think it's really important to understand that while you're describing this very scary experience of going down to this shelter in your basement and everyone all over the country is running to shelters, farmers do not have shelters. There are no bomb shelters on farms. They're just out there in the field.
Wow. Well, I did not know that. And I will say something that really struck me as you were describing this is that one of the things that happened on the Thursday night, Friday morning, like in that moment, in that hour, one of the things that let us know how serious it was that as we were all running down, a bunch of guys were gearing up and going out. And we realized, like, oh my gosh, those who, like
I
you
just got
said,
the
are,
chills.
it really was like that. It was like you see everyone going in one direction and then a few guys with guns on their backs and backpacks going in the other direction, leaving the building. And we're
Wow.
like, that, no, and then people just wishing them well. And I think that's something that really struck me as you were saying this, is that we do know about the soldiers. We watched them leaving. When you talk about the farmers, I'm thinking, I don't think people realize that. I mean, in theory, like the fact that groceries and fruit stores are, produce stores are still open, it's like, thank God there's still production of food. But
Right.
what that means and how that actually looks, I don't think people realize. And I think that, again, the soldiers who are protecting our country in such with tremendous sacrifice, really something that is unbelievable. I think that's a population we know about. But when I think about, like you said, the farmers protecting the borders, I don't think people realize. I don't think people realize what that is and what we don't see them leave. We don't see them on their farm. We don't see anything. We see fresh fruits and vegetables.
I mean, I can tell you a little just from my experience working with Save a Farm over the last almost 2 years. And I've done several trips to Israel and I've visited farms on basically every border of Israel. And so often I had the same experience where I'd be standing on a field and they would show me, the farmer would show me, you see the edge of my field over there, right past it, that's Gaza, or that's Lebanon, or that's Syria, or that's Jordan. I stood by all of these, right? Even Egypt. Um, and for some of them, under extraordinarily dangerous conditions, and I would say, and horrible damage that's been done to their fields and their crops and their business and their livelihood over a year and a half of no workers because October 7th targeted the Thailand workers and most of them left. And now with all this rocket fire from Iran, they can't expect their workers to stay dangerously in the field. So they're there alone. So they have no workers. Many of them themselves went out to fight. So they had to leave their fields to just rot. Many fields, like let's say on the border with Lebanon, for over a year, they weren't even allowed to access their field. They weren't even allowed to go. Everything just died. And it's not like a business where you sell socks and you close your store for a few months, you come back, you start selling socks again. It's a farm. Everything died. You have to now dig everything up and start a whole new planting season. You're like years back. It's a tremendous loss. So they've gone through all of this, and it's like I see them stand there. I'm like, what are you still doing here? Like, why are
Yeah.
you here? And they said, what do you mean? Like, how could I not be here? You see who's right across this fence. If I'm not here, who do you think will be here? That statement was said to me. This is not like choreographed or practiced. Different farmers who don't know each other, who are on different sides of the country, they all say this to me. If I'm not here, who do you think will be? And it shakes me every time. It's like people don't realize the sacrifice that they're making. They
Right.
don't feel they can leave. Right now, there's two things on the line. Many of these farmers just finally got back to work. And now Iran starts with the rockets and they're like, I can't go backwards again financially. I will lose my farm. And B, they have this national moral obligation. And they're right. Like, we will not be okay without them. The truth is that while all our soldiers are out there fighting to protect our land, we'll lose that land without our farmers holding the ground. What people don't know, this is very complicated, but land in Israel is leased. It's generally not owned, unless it was pre-48. It's a whole different complicated system. But if a farmer can't manage his lease payments for all the reasons I just enumerated, right? He is clearly not making money these last 2 years.
Right.
So he might default on his lease. The way it works is then the lease goes up to the highest bidder, which is almost always a legal Israeli Arab who can legally take over his lease. And many times the farmers have told me these guys show up with suitcases of money. We can only imagine from where, with
Wow.
not the intention, because like, oh, I really want to be a farmer in Israel. They want to be standing on our land. They want to have as much Israeli land be held by Arabs. And
Wow.
then imagine what that does for the Jewish people. Imagine what kind of security situation that is. That's never mind the more you could say smaller, but are also huge reasons that this is a problem. Like you were saying, like it's good that we have fruits and vegetables. Like it's not a joke. Like they're the food production and the economic security for the Israel. When things were really bad a few months after October 7th, and I was there, and so many farms weren't producing. I mean, they still aren't, but it was really bad then. And a lot of supermarkets I went into said on the like over tomatoes it said imported from Turkey. I was like, Turkey? We want to be relying on a country that clearly doesn't like us for our food? That's a scary position to be in, like geopolitically, economically. Like it's just scary. So you have national security, food security, just the whole structure of the economy, and then you have at the base of it all these farmers who, just like you said, you running into the shelter and you see guys putting on their guns and getting their bags and running out to war. Our farmers are going out to their fields and standing their ground and holding the land for the rest of us.
I really feel like it's almost like an invisible population or like an invisible army, so to speak. When you
Right.
describe it, they are really playing such a pivotal role on the one hand and how vulnerable they are to attack and to economic destruction on the other hand. And then again, the fact that it's so invisible, I think, to so many of the people, to so many of us, even here in Israel, not just in the US, it's really striking for me. One of the things that's really pivotal, that has a huge impact on the trajectory of how people, on resilience, and then on how people kind of do after trauma. And this isn't after trauma. This is a long,
Still
really,
during.
we're still during, and it's prolonged. One of the biggest factors is the support of the people at the very, I feel funny saying support because we're like a few steps behind. I mean, even being known, even being witnessed, that the people in their lives know and understand and see what they're going through. And especially, that's true with regard to anyone who went through a trauma, but people in positions like these, whether it's the soldiers or the farmers, one of the things that's also very, they described to you with such eloquent simplicity. Um, if we're not here, who do you think is going to be here? One of the other things that's very well known with regard to trauma, to resilience, to people being able to kind of make it through a situation like this is, Viktor Frankl's famous line, "He who has a why can survive any what or any how," or something like that, or can find a how. But the point is that even in the most devastating circumstances, when somebody has a very strong why, they can get through it in a whole different way. And when somebody has a very strong social support system, they can get through it in a whole different way. And it's almost like you're describing this is a population with a why. And I think that this is something that really characterizes the people of Israel in general. But right now, the soldiers and the farmers that are putting themselves on the front line or remaining on the front line, um, they have a very strong why. What's striking to me is like, do the people, we are their why. And do we even know what they're doing? Do we even know who they are and what they're up against and what they're dealing with? And, I think with regard to the soldiers, not that we know in detail, but we have a sense of we know in a general sense what they're going through. We want to support them. We want to show up for them. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I
and
personally, when I went to Israel, I brought from my hometown like letters and notes from kids, and you give them out to soldiers, and you see they care, they love it. They put them up in their barracks, they put them up on their tanks.
yeah.
So and if you could speak to the psychological side of that, and what that does for them.
Yeah, it's very significant. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who's one of the leading researchers on trauma, and he has a center where he treats and studies trauma. He wrote the book "The Body Keeps the Score."
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, very famous book. It's definitely a leading voice in the field. I was at a live presentation of his where he shared that they researched after the fall of the World Trade Center. After that, they wanted to see the long-term effects of PTSD, like who developed PTSD and what were kind of long-term effects of that event on people. And they studied the different populations that were there. And I'm pretty sure he said I don't think he said I think he said the single biggest factor that made a difference in the trajectory of their healing was who was waiting for them at home.
Mm.
Who was waiting for them? Were they going home to a supportive environment where they were going to be received and witnessed and kind of held emotionally through what they had been through? Or were they going home to isolation or to, people who were at the World Trade Center are regular people with regular families. Some had supportive families and some didn't. And those who had supportive families, we saw a tremendous difference. And this is something at this point we know with regard to trauma. We see it with abuse, with survivors of abuse. That who else was in the picture? Like people, the capacity of the human being to withstand trauma is really incredible. And one of the biggest factors is, well, what is the support that they receive? When you describe, the soldiers, and I've seen this, of course, endless drives to support the soldiers, we know that that makes a big difference. People asked me at the beginning of this war, people turned to me and said, what could we do? How could we be helpful? And the truth is, I think it took us all time to kind of catch up with what's going on. I think we still are. I think we're still figuring it out. But um, there was this moment. There was this moment in the beginning where I was like, this is bigger than me. I don't know. These guys are walking into trauma. They're not yet walking out of trauma. Um, and then I found myself just instinctively and intuitively, like many other people in Israel, when I would see a soldier on the street, I just found myself saying, like, thank you so much for your service and really meaning it. And you see the impact it makes. And it's like, the long-term effects and the long-term therapies and what we're going to learn and going through this as a nation, there are many things that we're learning right now as we go. One of them is the support is critical. It really is critical. I know a soldier This is something that I've heard from a number of people in a number of variations. But one of the things that went on here was that wives of soldiers really struggled with guilt when they were at home and feeling okay. And the soldiers themselves would say, like, no, you are our why. We are doing this for you, and we want you to have a good life. Like, it doesn't help us if you kind of stop yourselves from living. Um, and again, the point being, some of those soldiers shared, that when they are out there and scared, this is what they talk about. They talk about their families at home to keep them going because that is their why. And coming home to those families and those families being supportive. I mean, this is a very complicated situation right now because the whole country is at war. But again, thinking about the farmers versus the soldiers in a general sense, not to oversimplify their situation, but it is known that they are doing what they're doing, that they're out there. The farmers, when you describe it, I think that they are such an invisible population, and it it saddens me. I don't have a better way to say that. It's really, I don't have a word for it, overwhelming to think about what they are doing and how they are putting themselves out there. And we are their why, and they critically need the support of the people. And to think about, like, are they known enough? Do people realize this enough? When I see a soldier on the street, I know to thank him. But what if he's a farmer who happens to be visiting Jerusalem that day? Would I know to thank him? And the answer is I wouldn't. And even if I would know he was a farmer, I wouldn't. I'm more in the know right now because you and I have had conversations in the past about this. And so I feel so grateful to be in the know today. But I am very aware of how invisible the battle that this population is fighting for us is.
It's
Um,
interesting you're saying it like this because I'm realizing now as you're talking, I met a farmer who lives in near Oz, which I don't know if you know, it's the kibbutz that lost the highest percent of its people. Horrendous. This is a man who held the door of his safe room closed for 8 hours to protect his family as terrorists tried to get in. I mean, this man had trauma with a capital T. And he's a farmer whose field runs straight to the edge of Gaza. And I mean, the things he described just beyond. His father was murdered, his mother was taken hostage. And he's a simple farmer who doesn't expect anything from anybody. And when Save a Farm came and gave him money to help him get back on his feet a few months after October 7th, and he didn't know us. We Save a Farm is a project of curretn. So most of the farmers we know are Shemitah farmers. He was not a Shemitah farmer previously. We didn't know him before, but we were connected to him after October 7th through another farmer, a friend of his. And so we went and we visited him and we were able to give him some money to help him. And our farmer, who was his friend, told us afterwards that he was like straight up confused. And he said to his friend, why are they giving me money? Why do they care? What? And he told him, he said, like, you're our family and the farmers of Israel are important and you're protecting us and we're there for you. And he was so bowled over and so touched. I mean, it, like you said, like this gave him the how and the why and the what he's coming home to, not technically, but
yeah, psychologically. And
psychologically speaking,
yeah,
it's for him to keep going. And he does keep going and he's not giving up and it's hard. And
yeah.
and that's just one. And we need to do it for so many.
I want to tell you many years ago, like it was still early in my career, probably like 18 years ago. That's how long ago it struck me in such a visible and visceral way. Um, I wrote a poem called Things You'll Never Know. And it was really speaking to these kinds of experiences where I was starting to work with, it wasn't even clients, I wasn't getting private practice. I was very much at the beginning of my journey, but I was working with people who were recovering from all sorts of things. And I would hear stories like these. And it really struck me that it's like their seventh grade teacher saw them and
Mm,
cared, and it stayed with them for years. Or a Rebbe saw someone and cared, and they would be holding on to that for years. And that, which was what inspired that poem, because I was like, people don't realize it could be one thank you, one acknowledgement, one real understanding and witnessing and care, and in this case, appreciation for what they are doing. This is what fuels and motivates people. We are creatures of meaning. People sometimes think like the technical is the technical, which is like what I was saying, shock trauma, relational trauma is relational trauma. And there are technical elements to our lives. Money matters. But caring about their financial situation, showing up for them, being there, seeing them, it goes so much deeper. We are creatures of meaning, and they need to know that what they're doing is coming from a place of meaning. It's not because they can't make an income elsewhere. They can make an income elsewhere.
They can make a
That's
much better income elsewhere. Farming is not the best. No,
and
I haven't met a rich farmer yet.
yeah, and a much safer one at this point. They're
Yes.
doing this for meaning and purpose because of what it means and because of what they're doing, because of what they're part of. And to have that seen, that is the fuel that keeps people going for a really long time. That is the fuel that moves healing in a different direction, that builds resilience.
What would
So
you
what
say
you're
to
saying,
someone in America who says like, okay, but I only have $18 to give to help the farmers. What is that? How do you think that translates?
I think I think that they need money. And so big money is going to be helpful. I think that in some ways it is the $18 donations that say the people care about the people because it's obviously not about the big money. And sure, numbers add up. You can speak to that more than I can. But I can say that when somebody is going through something like this and they see a $2 donation, that's like, wow, obviously the person couldn't give a lot, but they bothered
Right.
to make a $2 donation because they cared, because they felt connected, because they see what we're doing, because they're invested. And the psychological, emotional impact of that, again, financially, I believe these things do add up. Don't
They,
underestimate.
oh, they do. We've been able to help hundreds of farmers from just donations adding up so far. There are
Yeah.
hundreds more.
Yes, I can say, I've been involved in other drives for survivors again of abuse with it, which is something that I work with quite a bit. Those little donations that come in big numbers, a lot of people giving little donations, it is so powerful in letting people know you are not alone, you are cared about, there's a support network behind you, there's a community that cares, and there's no question that that goes a really long way in terms of the overall experience that they have when they're out there protecting us. Again, we are their why. We are their why. The Jews of Israel, but I think in a sense the Jews all over the world, but by protecting the land of Israel
Of
and the Jews
course,
of Israel.
the only reason Jews in America are feeling okay right now is because we know we have Israel. Things do not feel good for a Jew in the diaspora right now. So we are all more than ever counting on Israel staying safe and secure. So 100% they are standing their ground for the people of Israel and for the Jewish people all over the world.
It really is mind-boggling. It really is a mind-boggling level of sacrifice of putting themselves out there. Again, we're familiar with this from the soldiers who do that. Um, I don't think, I mean, not I don't think, I know that people don't realize, and I'm so happy for this opportunity to shine some light on this.
Right.
Um, because I think if people did realize the meaning of being involved in any way, from the smallest to larger ways, uh, I just think, I think the people who are involved also need a why. And I want to say there really is a why. It really does matter. It really does make a difference. Your $5 donation, $10 donation, $18 a month donation makes a huge difference to them. They are seeing people who see us and care about us and recognize what we're doing. And the psychological impact that has, the emotional, social support that has, that becomes the fuel that keeps them going. So, yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate that insight and you taking the time to share that with everyone. And again, to anybody watching, again, these are farmers who are out there without a shelter, without a safe room, without workers after 600 days of their crops getting destroyed by rocket debris and everything else that has come along with this war. And they are there and they are standing their ground for all of us. So we really do need to show them that they're not, like Rikki's saying, invisible. Let's show them that they're visible, that we see them, that we see their sacrifice, and let's give them their why. Why should they keep going?
Wow. And thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this. I really, really, it truly is an honor. It is unbelievable what they are doing and the work that your organization is doing. Really, it's an honor. Thank you
Well,
for
same to
having me.
you. Thank you for helping the people of Israel get through this trauma because they're going to need it.
We really are all together. I know it sounds like cliche, but I mean, like, really, we need each other and we're all just desperately clinging. So, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Rikki.